The nights were growing longer, darker. Every morning felt like a victory simply for waking up alive. But for Sarah, the weight of leadership had become suffocating. The underground bunker was no longer a refuge. It was a prison, filled with hungry faces and tired eyes that looked to her for hope. The whispers of doubt grew louder with each passing day. And even her own heart, once steadfast in faith, began to waver. One evening, as Sarah sat alone, clutching the Bible that had once brought her so much comfort, the words felt distant, almost foreign. "Where are you, God?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The suffering was relentless. Every day, someone fell ill. Another person disappeared on a desperate search for food, never to return. The weight of it all crushed her spirit. Among those closest to her, cracks began to show. Jacob, once her most loyal companion, had become distant, his eyes reflecting the emptiness he felt inside. "I don't know how much longer we can go on like this, Sarah," he admitted one night, his voice hollow. "How can we have faith when the world is nothing but death and suffering? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we should have taken the mark." Sarah recoiled as if struck. The idea of giving in to the beast's mark was unthinkable. Yet she saw the desperation in Jacob's eyes. The same desperation she had been trying to ignore in herself. He wasn't alone. Others had begun to murmur about leaving the bunker, of giving up the fight and accepting the easier path. Some had already gone, their absence a haunting reminder of how fragile hope had become. Torn between her heart and her responsibility, Sarah faced the hardest decision of her life. Should she show compassion and let them go, or enforce a harsher, more rigid rule to keep everyone together, even if it meant losing their trust? Every night she prayed for strength, for answers, but the silence only deepened her despair. Then came the betrayal. One morning after another restless night, Sarah woke to find the bunker in chaos. Supplies had gone missing. Food, medicine, weapons. Panic spread through the small community as people searched for the culprit. Sarah's stomach dropped when Jacob's name was mentioned. She refused to believe it. Not him. Not her closest friend. But as she searched his sleeping area, her hands shaking, she found the missing items hidden away, a knife twisted in her heart. One morning, as Sarah stood at the entrance of the bunker, watching the dim light of a new day filter through the cracks, she heard a whispering voice behind her. It was Lena, a young woman, who had joined the group late, her faith stronger than most. She had been one of the few who never seemed to waver, always praying, always encouraging others, even when despair threatened to swallow them whole. "There's something you need to see," Lena said, her voice hushed but urgent. Curiosity piqued. Sarah followed her through the narrow passageways of the bunker until they reached a small storage room where a group of the survivors had gathered. Lena pointed to a small handheld radio, something Sarah had long assumed was broken. Static buzzed faintly through the speakers, but then, amidst the noise, a voice came through. "Repeat. If you're hearing this, there's still hope." The underground bunker was filled with silence, the only sound being the distant hum of generators, keeping their last bit of civilization alive. Sarah stood in the corner, her mind racing. The group had grown weaker, food was scarce, hope was even scarcer. They had survived weeks of attacks from soldiers and strange creatures, but the worst was yet to come. The night was pitch black outside the hidden cave where they hid, and Sarah was pacing, her heart heavy with the weight of the world. She had always been strong, always known what to do. But now she felt the burden of leadership as every decision seemed to come with a price. She glanced over at the children under her care, their small faces twisted in fear and exhaustion. Among them was little Joel, a boy who reminded her of her own son, now long gone in the rapture. She had promised to protect them, but deep down, she feared that promise was breaking. Suddenly, the stillness shattered. The ground shook, and the doors to the bunker burst open, soldiers swarming in, with a chilling efficiency. Their faces were cold, emotionless. Behind them, towering robots with glowing red eyes scanned the room, tracking every movement. Panic erupted. Mothers screamed. Men grabbed makeshift weapons, and Sarah rushed to shield the children. But it was too late. Within minutes, the soldiers had the upper hand. A deep, commanding voice cut through the chaos. A captain of the enemy forces. "We are here for you, Sarah," he said, stepping forward, his eyes gleaming with sinister intent. "You've caused too much trouble. But don't worry. We don't need to kill you today. You will come with us. Willingly." Sarah's blood ran cold as soldiers began rounding up the children. They screamed, crying out for her, their small hands reaching toward her as they were dragged into the dark. "No," Sarah shouted, trying to fight her way through the soldiers, but she was outnumbered. "Leave them alone." The captain smirked. "We will exchange the children's lives for yours. You come with us, or they die." He gave a small, almost casual nod, and soldiers began separating the children, dragging them further into the forest. The threat was real. A sudden movement caught Sarah's eye. It was Elijah. He had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for his moment. His face was filled with determination, his body poised for action. He wouldn't let them take the children. Without a second thought, Elijah launched himself into the fray, knocking 2 soldiers to the ground with a single fluid motion. Chaos exploded around them. Elijah fought with a fury Sarah had never seen before. He moved like lightning, but he was outnumbered. The soldiers were too many, and the robots too powerful. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. As she watched him fight, she wanted to scream, to help, but her feet were frozen in place. In the midst of the battle, a single shot rang out, cutting through the air with a deadly finality. Time slowed. Elijah staggered backward, clutching his chest, his hand coming away covered in blood. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. He fell to his knees, his eyes meeting hers, full of pain, but also love. "No," she whispered, running to him as the soldiers dragged the children away. She fell beside him, cradling his head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. "No, no, no, no." Her voice cracked, the world around her blurring into nothing but the weight of her grief. Elijah smiled weakly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "I had to try. For you, for them." His voice was faint, the life slipping from his body. Sarah's heart shattered into a million pieces. She had fought beside him, trusted him. And now, in this moment, she realized just how much she loved him. With trembling hands, she leaned down, pressing her lips to his, in a soft, tender kiss. It was a kiss filled with all the unspoken words they had never shared, the emotions that had been buried under the weight of survival. "I love you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Elijah's eyes softened, and for a moment, it seemed as if time stood still. Just the two of them in a world that was falling apart. He raised his hand, gently brushing her cheek with his fingers. Then, his hand fell limp, and the light left his eyes. As she stepped into the darkness, alone and heartbroken, she made a silent vow. No matter the cost, no matter the pain, she would protect those she loved, even if it meant laying down her own life. The world around her was spiraling into chaos, but Sarah would not surrender to despair. She would fight until her last breath. Through the town, heaven is my home, I'll wear my crown. I will press on, I won't back down. Fight the fear,
break the chains, in the sun and in the rains. Heaven is my home, no doubt remains. Fight the fear, break the chains.